The last time that I did a YouTube was over a year ago, last March 2020. And we talked about the immune system and how the immune system is designed to recognize foreign proteins and destroy them. And so I had mentioned that it doesn't matter whether the virus comes from chickens or pigs or bats or Mars, that our immune system is equipped to recognize it and decide what is the best course to destroy that particular invader. And I hope that that particular YouTube helped people to have the confidence to face this pandemic and not, panic. And I think it did its job. I had mentioned that as far as the pandemic is concerned, it wasn't following the criteria of a pandemic, and we aren't finding people dead in the street. You know? And as far as deaths are concerned, yes, deaths happen. It is a virus, and not everyone's dying because everyone's immune system is different, and they'll react differently. They may get really sick. They may not get sick at all. They may die. But we do know the statistics now, where we didn't know them last March, and that is that 99.9x% of people that come in contact with COVID get over it. So the death rate is very small, smaller than the flu or even maybe the common cold. And the X is there because it varies between age groups. And one thing we know now that maybe we didn't know as much then is that old people are more subject to getting it and dying from it than young people. And I don't know if I mentioned last time about Sweden, probably not, but Sweden never did shut down. They didn't close any businesses. They didn't close schools. They didn't wear masks. They didn't social distance. And their death rate is about the same as any other European country that's, high population. Their surrounding states, like Finland and Norway, they're more rural, and so they don't have the same situation. But the thing about the Swedish experiment, if you would, was that they didn't take precautions, and they didn't close the schools, and they didn't wear masks, and not one child died in Sweden. Where they had thousands and thousands of deaths from old people, they had no children die. And as far as the old people are concerned, I was listening to a doctor from Sweden, and he was really upset of the way that Sweden handled the situation. And that was that if they got COVID, they just had them take care of it at home, which really was nothing, They wouldn't let them in the hospitals. And this doctor was saying that if they just given them fluids and oxygen, they would have survived. They were dehydrated and they needed oxygen. But that's what they did. And basically the country sent them a cocktail of analgesic and I think it was morphine and a anti-anxiety drug, so that they would just feel better as they die. So that's why they had the amount of deaths they did with older people. They didn't really protect them as other countries did. So that's why their death rate's what it is. But the interesting thing is that they didn't lock down, because that's never been done in the history of the world, locking down everybody for something. In the past it's been those that are sick, locked down. Those that are well, continue doing what you're doing, just live your life. And that's what's worked before. As far as the Spanish flu, they tried doing masks on the Spanish flu, A lot of people were rebelling against it, and they were making people wear them, But the information we have today is that they don't stop viruses. And so I think it's the cruelest thing to say, tell people that these masks stop viruses. Old people are with comorbid conditions are going to hear that, and they're going to go out in public, and then they're going to die. because of their comorbid condition, their age, and their lack of proper immunity. Their immune systems aren't working. But if you're young, even if you're old and you've got a good immune system, you don't have to worry that you will survive. And even people that don't care one thing about their immune system, don't care about their health, are surviving. 99.9x% of people survive this particular quote-unquote pandemic. And so we had mentioned briefly about vaccines the last time I talked on YouTube. And I had mentioned that the technology's there to not have the adjuvants and the preservatives and all the problems with vaccines that themselves cause ill health. They have the technology to have you take a little wafer about the size of a contact lens, and it dissolves, and then you get the stimulation to your immune system you need from the full virus that's been attenuated. I mentioned that last time, and that's still the case. As far as I'm concerned, you expose a healthy body to a little bit of disease to prep it for the disease when it comes. I think that's a great idea. It's just the way they're doing it I don't agree with. Now, this new vaccine, and I have to say quote unquote, as far as the vaccine is concerned, because it's not a vaccine in the true sense of the word. They didn't take the virus and attenuate it, weaken it, and then give you that to stimulate your immune system. They actually took just a portion of the virus, the spike protein, and they did a synthetic message, RNA message, for your body to send the signal out for your body to actually make the antigen. So they didn't even have to give a lot of the spike protein. They didn't have to manufacture it and give that. What they did is they tricked your body into producing the spike protein. And by doing that, once you come in contact with the disease, since that virus has a spike protein on it, your immune system will start reacting to it. And that's how that's supposed to work. Frankly, it's kind of an ingenious thing as far as the idea is concerned. As far as what's happening, no. When you do something like that, you can't call it back. So if you send the signal out for your body to make this spike protein so that you'll be ready for the virus when it comes, your body's just producing those spike proteins and producing those spike proteins, and you're getting an overstimulation with this spike protein that's not supposed to be there. So when the virus actually hits with those spike proteins on, the biggest danger is that your immune system won't shut off, and that you're going to get the cytokine storm, and that's going to kill you. So that's the problem with this. You can't even call it a vaccine. The scientists are calling it a biological experiment. It's not a vaccine. They call it a vaccine because then they don't have to be responsible for any deaths or injuries that's caused by it, because all vaccines manufacturers protected. So this biological experiment, they are calling it a vaccine, but it's not. But it is a biological experiment. And like I said, it's kind of an ingenious thing. But it didn't happen just overnight. It didn't happen within a year. They've been working on it since 2003. And they've done the animal experiments. First one was with cats, and all the cats died when they were injected. Then they did it with ferrets, and all the ferrets died. They have not had a successful animal test that went well for them. So VAERS is the Vaccine Adverse Reaction Reporting System. And just last week or something, I was looking at that, and there was over 190 deaths from this particular vaccine that happens like right after you give the vaccine. That's just spiked over 3,000 deaths that they don't even consider unless it's like right after you get the vaccine. So you're not even considering the ones that are a week or 2 weeks after. They're only the day of or the day after is the ones they're looking at, and there's over 3,000 now. Adverse reactions, specifically death from this particular. I don't know how many adverse reactions there are. I don't think people even report those. I know the medical system's not reporting them, but as far as the VAERS system is concerned, there's at least 3,000. And as the FDA and both the FDA and the CDC have said, that what is reported to VAERS is most likely under 10%, probably more like 1% or 0.01%. And so we're looking at least 30,000 deaths, if you're looking at it that way. Because most people don't report it. And as far as my personal experience, the people that I know that died didn't get reported. So there you go. Any rate, so that's with the vaccine. And that's all water under the bridge now. What I've been getting is a lot of calls from people with buyer's remorse, if you would, that they took the vaccine and now they've had some adverse reactions and want to know what to do for that situation. And then also, that's just come up recently, is that people have just not gotten the vaccine, the biological experiment, if you would, but just been around someone that got it and are having the same symptoms. The biggest symptoms, and the ones that they stopped the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for, was the blood clotting. And that seems to be a common thing, not just with Johnson & Johnson, but also with the Moderna and the Pfizer. So you're getting these bleeding disorders and these clotting disorders. So that's something that we need to address. If you've already got it, then we can't say, nah, you shouldn't have got it. Now we got to say what you're going to do about it. And we have to go back to what we said in the first place, how to prevent the virus in the first place. You know, getting your immune system strong, getting you healthy. So being healthy and having a strong immune system is one of the best things you can do. And we mentioned, I believe, on the last YouTube video, was that you've got to have your vitamin D, you've got to have your vitamin A, your vitamin C, and your zinc levels up high. I think I mentioned the study in Indonesia where they took serum levels of all the patients being admitted for this COVID-19. And what they found out was that those with very low levels of vitamin D, none of them survived. But the ones that had adequate levels of vitamin D, 4% died. And again, we have to remember that overall, 99.9x% of people survive this particular virus. Okay, so one of the things we know about the virus is that it affects the lungs. And so you get damage in the lungs. And so the first thing we need to do is take something to repair the lungs and also to protect it from any damage that might come. And I hate to say products, but there's nothing better in the world than Dr. Christopher's lung and bronchial formula. It works fantastic for any lung problems, and that's the first thing I would look at doing. You're also having problems with nerve damage, and so I would also look at his nerve formula, which again is excellent, excellent formula. So those two things are the things I would mention. Besides eating correctly, staying away from sugar, white flour, and dairy products, and eating a lot of fresh raw produce is your best bet for not having complications with exposure to this new, altered virus. You have to remember the name of the virus is SARS coronavirus 2 because the genome is pretty close to SARS coronavirus that happened in 2003. And one of the things I need to mention right now to put people's minds at ease, if you've had the disease and you're tested and you have the antibodies, because some of the tests were false positive, but if you've had the disease, you were sick, and you recovered, and you get the test and find out that you have the antibodies, they're saying, oh, we don't know if those are going to last a couple of weeks, a couple of months. No, they know. They already know. Because the studies were done back in 2003, and they found after the disease had done its job and kind of petered out, they found 100 people that had been infected with SARS coronavirus, and they all had, after 17 years, they all had the antibodies. So they do know that getting the disease naturally, because they didn't have a vaccine back then, getting the disease naturally, people that survived are protected for at least 17 years, and who knows how many more after that, but we do know 17 years. How many people are going to have their antibodies from taking the vaccine? They don't know. all they can tell you right now is 2 months, because that's how long they've been doing the vaccine, 3 months, 2-3 months. If they still have antibodies after 3 months, then it's 3 months. But they don't know anything more than that. But they do know from the natural disease, having the disease and getting over it, it's 17 years. So put your minds at ease. If you've had the disease, you are protected. That's the one thing I really had to clear up on this one. As far as the damage that's being caused from, they didn't think there would be any damage from the spike protein because it doesn't exist in nature, by itself. And that's why they did it. And I think the idea was kind of brilliant. It's just that when you're doing science, things go whoops. It's the whoops theory. They have to go, whoops, we didn't know that was going to happen. And I think that's what's happening now with this particular injection, is that the complications. And then, like we said with the Johnson & Johnson, it was the blood clotting disorder. What they're finding out is not just that. They're finding that all kinds of bleeding problems, especially menstruation. Menstruation is amplified, and women are having very, very large menstruation. It's causing miscarriages. There's a number of things that's happening, and also that you don't even have to have the injection. You just have to be around someone that had the injection, and you could have those same symptoms, the clotting problems and such. So we definitely have to work on the circulatory system and the integrity there. One of the things that I would definitely recommend is eating the white part of oranges, and maybe taking some rutin along with eating that white part of oranges, and you're going to get the full spectrum of protection for your vascular system. What the flavonoids in the white part of oranges does is protects your circulatory system. It's for vascular integrity. That's the specific for rutin. So we don't want to just take rutin, we want to take the full spectrum. So we find something that rutin is in, like the white part of citrus. We don't have to just eat the white part, we can eat the good tasting part too. But you do the whole thing and you take your rutin, and you're going to be protected with your vascular system. I would definitely take, and I'd hate to say another product again, but I don't think there's anything better in the world, and that is Dr. Christopher's blood circulation formula. We definitely want to take the blood circulation formula in dealing with this situation. Now, as far as science is concerned, we ought to look at science and see what has been used in the past. You're going, well, this is a brand new disease. Yeah, it's true, but it's still a virus. And so the most popular and I guess most effective drug out there is Tamiflu. And so Tamiflu, this is interesting, is taken from a plant. What they do is they extract it from the sweet gum tree, from the leaves. And so they've got this big source, because it's a native of the United States. So they've got this sweet gum tree, and they're using the leaves to extract shikimic acid from the sweet gum tree, and and that's used as a precursor for making Tamiflu. And so they haven't figured out how to make it just chemically, so they do need to extract it from plants. Now, the highest plant in shikimic acid would be star anise. And of course, with most of these situations, it's either the leaf or it's in the fruit or the seed. And with star anise, it's in the seed. And I believe your sweet gum trees are around 1.5%. And star anise is like 4 to 6% of the shikimic acid. So that's one thing we can look at. So what I did, was when I found out about this, I think it was from the Health Ranger. That was a good source. But then I looked up the plants that would have a shikimic acid in it. And I looked on Duke's phytochemistry site, and the ones that he had mentioned that are highest in shikimic acid are all abortifacents. They can cause abortion. I thought, whoa, whoops, you know, because they had mentioned on a Health Ranger that pine needles, you're finding this shikimic acid in pine needles, and that's a really good source. But he did mention that cows that had eaten pine needles, you know, large amounts of pine needles, aborted their calves. So that's how we know that it's abortifacient, is what we call it. So again, you'd still have to eat large amounts, but then again, when you're pregnant, you don't want to take chances at all, whether with the drug, and I don't know why anyone that's pregnant want to take that drug. But they already had, then you've already taken a bigger chance than if you take pine needle tea. And just as a personal experience with pine needle tea, not on myself, but someone that I was in contact with 30, 40 years ago was protesting something, you know, as far as society and something's concerned. So he lived in a tree for, I can't remember how many weeks, if it was a couple of months, you know. But the only thing he consumed was pine needle tea. And so it didn't kill him, you know. And I don't think there's any really adverse reactions. And so I find pine needle tea to be very safe. And it can be very effective. And it does have this, in higher amounts, this shikimic acid in it. So I think that would be your best route to go, is just to gather pine needles and make a tea out of them, and that's going to be the safest. Now, he was talking on his presentation about using an espresso machine, which is going to force hot water through the seeds. You know, you want to take your seeds and you want to grind them up, or your leaves as far as pine needles are concerned, and grind them up to like a coffee ground, and then you push this hot water with force through them, and you're going to get a higher percentage of constituents out of your tea. Then he was mentioning that you put I think it was 70% alcohol and 30% water as a menstruum to do it, and you're going to get an even stronger extraction with the substances like shikimic acid. So that's something that's brand new and totally usable. I know it's safe because of my contact with this person that was living in a tree for weeks and only living on pine needle tea. So, you know, it's possible, totally is possible. Other substances it's in fennel, and again, it's in a higher amount. And the star anise we mentioned, and the pine needles. Guess what Duke said? It's ubiquitous. It's in all plants. You're going to get shikimic acid in all plants. And I think I was told just recently that that's that shikimic pathway that makes Roundup work. It takes over that shikimic pathway and destroys the plants. So plants do have shikimic acid, usually smaller amounts. But those plants that have larger amounts, that's what I want to address now, because I got a call from someone that was pregnant and was extremely concerned with both the effects of being around somebody that had the vaccine and also that she was pregnant. And we had seen that the pine needles had caused the abortion in the calves. And so she was asking me, well, which pine can I use? Because that pine doesn't work, obviously, for me, you know, because it caused abortions. And so I looked into the situation. And yeah, the ones that are highest in shikimic acid are abortifacients. So we probably don't want to do that during pregnancy. Everybody else should be fine with, you know. But as far as pregnant women, you need to be a little more careful. So I looked to see which common foods that we eat would be and that will have larger amounts, but not those high amounts of shikimic acid. And the first thing that was mentioned was alfalfa. So that's got larger amounts of shikimic acid. And here's one that everybody can eat, you know, and you're not going to have a problem with shikimic acid and abortions by drinking carrot juice. So eating carrots, drinking carrot juice is going to get you that same benefit of protection for this particular spike protein. And basically what it does is it basically interferes with the action. And so the enzyme that's so important for spreading the virus can't attach when you've got shikimic acid there. And so you're basically thwarting the process. We found that parsley has the shikimic acid in medicinal amounts. Sunflower seeds. Nobody's dying from sunflower seeds, and nobody's aborting after taking sunflower seeds. Mung beans, black beans, pears, and then the herbs ginger and horsetail. And you know, Dr. Christopher has another product, and this isn't just a Dr. Christopher product. This is a product from way back with Jethro Kloss, and he just included it in his repertoire, and that is the composition powder, which is what we use for colds and flus all the time anyway. And so you're most likely getting some of this shikimic acid from the bark of the white pine. So they were saying that they didn't know that it was in any other part of the plant except for the needles. Now we know that it's most likely in that bark too, because it has been used antiviral. So we would also use that. So hydroxychloroquine has been on the market since the early 1950s. We seem to have a pretty good track record. So if you come down with the disease and you're not doing well, you know, I would be one that would say, you know, try something like that, or something like this Suramin. This has been around for 100 years. And that would be one way of dealing with the situation. Of course, our way is just totally natural, so that's what we would do. A natural way of getting the substance that's in hydroxychloroquine would be to make your own from grapefruit rinds. There's a natural medicine that's very natural. And of course, the old standby would be the Peruvian bark, which is still available as an herb. And that has the quinine in it, but it's the quinine that kills the virus. And just one other thing while we're still here. You know, besides eating healthy and getting in the sun gets your vitamin D. You know, the sun penetrates your skin and reacts with cholesterol, and you manufacture vitamin D with cholesterol in the sun. And if you have lily white skin like Scandinavians, 20 minutes in the sun and you got all the vitamin D you need for the day. If you have really dark skin, you know, from around the equator area, from India, Afghanistan, Africa, that really dark skin blocks the sun from penetrating so much, and so you have to be out in the sun longer, maybe 2-3 hours, to get the same vitamin D from the sun that the Scandinavians get. So, and then there's been studies on that, you know, from England, where they show that it's the pigment in the skin that's blocking the vitamin D from being produced. So if you got dark skin and you don't eat fish, then you probably need to take vitamin D3. If you're from Scandinavia and you don't have problems, and you don't have the sun like 6 months of the year, it's most likely because you eat a lot of fish, and the fish has the vitamin D in it. So there we go there. I just want to say one other thing, and that was with these variants. You know, they say, oh, there's the coronavirus, the COVID variant from England, or the COVID variant from South Africa, or the COVID variant from Brazil. Well, I heard one scientist talk about that, and this is how she summed up the situation with variants. She says, so I'm driving down the freeway, way over the speed limit, I'm going, say, 90 miles an hour, and I take it up to 95, that's a variant speed. And that's just as relevant as a variant virus. It's the same virus, it just spreads faster. And generally, when they spread faster, they're less virulent. So less deaths, less sickness, more spreading. It's just the way viruses work. You know, it's like, I'm not getting where I need to go. I'll vary and become even more susceptible. You know, people will become more susceptible to me, you know, if I'm a virus. But that's what a variant is. This whole thing about, oh, we're going to have to do another vaccine for this variant. No, it's a variant. Instead of going 90 miles an hour down the freeway, you're going 95. It's as simple as that. I thought that was a really good explanation. In conclusion, I just wanted to give people a lot of hope. And if you do the right things, if you eat the right foods, and you get all the nutrients you need then you're not going to be subject to these viruses. I mean, just being out in the sun, the ultraviolet light from the sun destroys a virus within 20 seconds. That's why the latest information from CDC is that, they were saying less than 10% of cases are from outdoors. Well, yeah, that's not a lie. That's true. It is under 10%, but it's way under 10%. It's 1% or 0.01% of cases come from being outside. And so you should be outside. That's where you're going to be most protected from the virus. It's not going to exist outside. And I just have to mention, what a silly thing to wear a mask outside. It doesn't stop anything, and it's going to prevent you from getting the oxygen you need. You don't play sports with a mask on. You need that oxygen. I think just recently, this last week, they had a track meet, and the girl that won, and she was way ahead of everybody else, she collapsed at the finish line, totally oxygen deprived, because she was wearing a mask when she was doing sports. I mean, how insane is that? So, eat the right foods, get exercise, not with a mask on, but you get an exercise, you get plenty of oxygen, you get plenty of sunshine, you get plenty of vitamins and nutrients. You're not going to have a problem with any virus, like I said, not from bats, not from pigs, not from cows, not from chickens, not from Mars. You're not going to have a problem with viruses. Your immune system will take care of it. You are designed to do that. And so what you need with your immune system is to eat all these good foods and stay away from the bad foods so that you can have a healthy immune system. And to have a strong immune system, you need to have contact with antigens. So if you bubble yourself up in a house, you'll never challenge your immune system, and it's going to get weaker and weaker. If you're out interacting with people, if you're touching people, if you're talking with people, if you take that mask off, you're going to have that little challenge to your immune system, which is going to make it stronger and healthier. So we're saying just the opposite. You need contact with other people to strengthen your immune system. If you isolate yourself, your immune system is going to get weaker and weaker. That's science. That's not me just thinking this. That's science. And I hate to say it, but it's just that we keep being told, follow the science. And so we that follow the science are just stupefied by the people that are saying they're following the science and they don't. Almost everything they're doing is wrong. You need healthy food. And so a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And that pretty much sums that up. You do a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And as far as bad foods, you stay away from sugar, white flour, and dairy products, and you'll be fine. Do the lung broncho formula like we talked about, and just keep yourself healthy. And don't worry. Don't worry, be happy. I think there was a song that could go to that, isn't there? So that's my message. Thank you very much.